What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz here today to talk about a lot. We're going to get into, first of all, congratulating Texas Tech on getting a bowl season started off on the right foot for the good old Big 12, walloping Cal and really making that Cal QB look silly, man. He threw some of the dumbest passes I feel like I've seen in a minute. But excited about that. As you see in the tease of the video, Big 12 pushing for some change in college football. It comes courtesy of two of the most successful coaches in the Big 12, Mike Gundy and Chris Klieman. I want to get into some of their comments about where not only they see college football going, but what could be changed with the calendar right now to make the lives of everybody easier. Because if you haven't noticed, it's a pretty hectic time to be a college football coach right now with the transfer portal and bowl season and National Signing Day for your high school class. There is just a lot to be paying attention to if you are a coach as of right now. If you saw the video that posted earlier today, we are going to react some to that too here on the live show tonight. That, of course, being that the Pac-2 got a nice win in court over the outgoing 10, and I am always here to cheer that on. As with any kind of court case, it still may not be the end. I don't think anybody knows exactly, at least unless I have missed an update. And nobody seems to know exactly what the next move is going to be for the outgoing 10. They've been eerily quiet in the wake of this decision, and a decision that really surprised many, including John Wilner, who's as plugged into anybody or as anybody to the Pac-12. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about what the next step is going to be there, if we will get some kind of settlement. Hopefully cooler heads prevail and it does not become more convoluted for Oregon State and Wazoo. But we'll raise a glass to them and as well the Washington Supreme Court, the state of Washington Supreme Court that made that landmark sort of decision for Oregon State and Wazoo. A lot to cover in the transfer portal, including I think the biggest thing going on in the Big 12 right now is whether or not Ollie Gordon is going to come back to Oklahoma State. I did see that the reports seem to be he's been attending basketball games at Gallagher-Iba. I would certainly hope that he comes back to Oklahoma State and it doesn't turn into a Matthew Golden situation, who we saw yesterday announce that he is going to Texas, left Houston, and is going now to Texas. But there are a lot of high-profile names that have made decisions in the portal here lately. Taj Brooks, a big one for Texas Tech as well. So I want to get to a bit of a transfer portal rundown, and definitely make sure to let me know if I am missing anybody there when I start going through that list, because this is definitely the time of year to be paying attention to all of that. And as we're in a transition, I was about to say transitory. We're in a transition period for the Big 12 conference here going into the new league in 2024. I think watching how many of those Matthew Golden sort of situations are happening is something that will be important for this league. You don't want too much of that to start happening as now Texas and OU depart for the SEC. And you're left with what this new look league is going to look like for the foreseeable future. At least we think. And that is the rundown today. That is what I have for you today coming up on the show. If you've been here before, you know that you can be a part of it tonight. We've got over 100 people in the chat already. I will not be able to pay attention to everything happening in the regular chat. So if you want to be on the show tonight, click the $ below the chat box. It will pin your chat in a separate column for me. You make a donation there, turns it into a super chat, pins it in a separate column for me, ensures that it gets read on the show here tonight. That is the way to not only make your voice heard and control where the content is going tonight, but also will help support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 conference realignment and college football and college hoops content here on this channel on a week in, week out basis. Totally free way to support the channel. Just one click. All I need is a like. If you could like the video, I would definitely appreciate that as well. Totally free and really does help. So does leaving a comment in the comment section underneath the video. And that can be whether you agree or disagree, love me, hate me, whatever it might be. All of that stuff definitely does help. So let me know what you think about the show here today. And if you are catching this after the fact, you can also support the channel on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 in order to do that. John-Kurtz-4 once again on Venmo to support there. And that, I think, is the laundry list that I have to get out of the way, the housekeeping, if you will, before we get rolling with the show. I am back from Manhattan. I drove 4 hours round trip today to watch K-State get their ass kicked by Nebraska in basketball. It was a sight to behold today from courtside seats, nonetheless. Got to watch that unfold. K-State scored 12 points in the second half. Led 34-31 at halftime and lost 62-45. So Not the best of days, but look, we'll have a fun show. It'll make up for it. Everything's going to be all right. And I have to start today by giving a shout out to Texas Tech, man. Texas Tech takes care of Cal. Little bit of a sluggish start, but after that, all Red Raiders. They blitz Cal. Baron Morton looked really good. I thought looked healthier. I know he had, it was an AC joint, right? And I believe is what the report was on the injury that he was dealing with and was not able to throw much in practice during the week, coming down the stretch run of the regular season. But he gets out there in the bowl game, looked better without 3 of his top 5 wide receivers. That's another thing. You know, Tech took some portal hits with the wide receiver core. But 250 yards, 3 touchdowns for Baron Morton. And one of the things I really like about it, if you're a Tech fan, is seeing a freshman wide receiver go off for 7 catches, 106 yards, and a touchdown in a bowl game. It's the type of thing I am hoping for out of K-State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm going to see Avery Johnson at quarterback, and that's going to set the table largely for next year. But K-State's got some freshman receivers, one who is playing in Jace Brown, who's already been impressive, but also, you know, can we get a Trey Spivey in there? I would love to see K-State have a true freshman wide receiver pop off all of a sudden and have a big game like that. So that's the type of thing that you're hoping for in bowl season, especially these days when you have so many opt-outs, guys not actually playing in the bowl game. It's an opportunity for a lot of young players to play and get you set off on the right foot for next year. Tech D was pretty good. 6 sacks of Fernando Mendoza. That ball that Mendoza tried to like throw away, I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback like trying to throw the ball away at the feet of a defender or his intended target, you know, basically just like bouncing the ball down on the ground and instead doesn't get it quite low enough and it winds up being picked. That was wild. Tech really seemed to have that dude all out of sorts. So kudos once again to Joey McGuire and company for doing that. Not that, look, I'm not here to tell you that bowl season is like some be all end all of conference superiority and it's some great message to send to the Pac-12. Maybe you'd consider it the ACC now that Cal is going to be in the ACC. I don't know about any of that because it's just hard to take much from bowl season these days. But, you know, it's some nice positive juice heading into next year, which Tech certainly can use and certainly can ride. We've seen basically the same type of season each of the first 2 years from Joey McGuire here. I think this one obviously a little bit more disappointing. It was certainly by record with 7-6 as opposed to 8-5 last year. But when I say similar, it's that, you know, sluggish start, quarterback injuries, but you finished the year hot. This time around, it was winning 4 of the last 5. Last year, it was winning 4 straight to finish 8-5. And that set up just a tidal wave of momentum where Texas Tech was a popular pick to win the Big 12 heading into this next year. And when you combine finishing off the season this way, seeing that you've got a freshman receiver that may be able to step up, seeing that Baron Morton looked a lot better when healthy, and now knowing that Taj Brooks, one of the absolute best running backs in the country, is going to be coming back, as that is a part of the portal news that I referenced earlier. Taj Brooks is going to be the back in the Big 12. Not good for the rest of the league. Great for Texas Tech. You can see some momentum picking up for the Red Raiders once again, pending, I suppose, what the transfer portal haul winds up looking like by the end. But top 25 recruiting class is coming in as well for Joey McGuire. So there does seem to be like a similar sort of wave of momentum, at least to me right now for Tech. Now, I don't think it's going to hit all the way as high as it did last year, where you're seeing a ton of people picking them to win the league. And some of that is going to be just being gun shy from this year, having what happened happen. And my concern and my question mark for Tech will be the same thing. I remember saying this like mid-year. I just still have question marks about whether or not the ceiling is high enough on Baron Morton for Tech to be like a Big 12 championship caliber team. But I certainly think, again, they'll have like 9-win potential next year. And that's me without looking at the actual schedule. But I would think Texas Tech probably has 9-win potential next year if some things fall right. And there's definitely still reason for optimism with what Joey McGuire is building. So for all my Tech fans out there, Tech viewers, Tech listeners, I'm thrilled for you guys that you got that win. Still is crazy to me that the Independence Bowl is so much earlier than everything else in the Big 12. But it is a nice little appetizer for bowl season for the league. So had to get that out of the way. I appreciate the Red Raiders for getting that done. All right, I'm taking a peek here at the, we'll go ahead and hop into the super chats here. We can bounce around a little bit. I promise I will get to the comments of Mike Gundy and Chris Klieman here very shortly, which is the tease of the video. Big 12 trying to push for some change in college football, but we'll kick things off with Joe. I appreciate you, Joe. Thank you for being here. Joe says, I tend to try and use logic regarding Ollie Gordon. Why would he be working out and practicing and also playing the Texas Bowl if he was leaving? Yeah, look, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, I think all signs now, I'm not as plugged in as those of you who follow Oklahoma State on a daily basis, but from what I have been able to discern, all signs seem to be pointing toward Ollie Gordon returning. I'm going to read a little blurb here. Gordon has yet to announce his intentions for the 2024 season, but the main worry is that the unanimous All-American and Doak Walker Award winner will leave Stillwater for a better NIL opportunity elsewhere in what should be his third and final year in college football. There's plenty of optimism that he will come back for the Pokes next season, but until he announces his intentions to the public, there's plenty of angst for the people around the program. When it comes to an announcement, though, there won't be any rushing Gordon, as he's been clear that it will come in his own timing. Quote, I just want to make my own announcement on my own time, Gordon told Marshall Scott of Pistols Firing. Yeah, and I saw the whole exchange. I saw a video of the exchange where he was being asked about his future, and basically he just declined two different questions about it and said, like, look, I just want to make the announcement on my own time. And if I'm a fan, like if I'm a diehard fan, if that were a K-State player doing that, it would just make me nervous because that's what you do as a fan, right? But yes, I agree with you, Joe. I mean, if he's going to play in the bowl game, if he's practicing, if he is attending Oklahoma State basketball games, like all of those things seem like very, very good and positive signs. But it's just college football 2023. You are going into the first year where some will feel that the Big 12 is going to be significantly diminished without Texas and Oklahoma. I think those of us that here on the channel live, eat, breathe, sleep, all of this, we may not feel quite as strongly as that, but there's a lot of change going on, and it's a year. That's why I mentioned earlier at the outset of the video, like the Matthew Golden sort of situations, keeping my eye on it, because if there were going to be a time for more of that to start to happen, I would think it would be this year, with perhaps a lot of negative recruiting going on out there against Big 12 schools and those who are trying to tamper in the portal and get their hands on guys like Ollie Gordon. I would think that you'd probably be seeing some of that out there. So I hope it does not happen. Like, this is one that I really, truly think if you're a Big 12 fan, I know that the inclination might be to say, like, hey man, if Ollie Gordon leaves, that's a huge stud off of a contender. That makes it easier for my squad to win the Big 12 championship. And while that may well be true, I do not think that this is something that would be good for anybody in the league if it were to happen, that Ollie Gordon were to jump for a bigger NIL deal somewhere else, particularly if it's going to be a Big 10 or an SEC school. I don't think that's anything anybody here wants to see. You can't, this guy just finished top 10 for the Heisman. He is going to be a probably like top 5-ish Heisman candidate next year. I would have to think. You want that guy playing in your conference. You don't want to lose. You don't want to see him rip it up, win the Doak Walker Award, lead the nation in rushing, and then bounce off to the SEC to go play for somebody for 7 figures. So some of that will be incumbent on Oklahoma State to make sure that they step up and provide the necessary resources that he is going to need to stick around. And look, I trust that Oklahoma State can do that from a financial standpoint. The one hang up and hold up there is, like, I listened last offseason to all the complaints from Oklahoma State people about Mike Gundy and NIL not being as anxious to embrace that as perhaps he should. But my hope is that is really coming around. And I know that people could change on that, because Chris Klieman just made it a point in his latest press conference to say that he has seen somewhat of a personal paradigm shift with that. And I've heard similar things about Gene Taylor, K-State's athletic director, where, at K-State, I think Jerome Tang has been very aware that he was going to need NIL to be a big factor and very open to it. I think Chris Klieman and Gene Taylor have been more old school, hesitant to come around on it, but now they are, because they are seeing what it means in college football. And if you're following K-State football, you don't need me to really tell you why. K-State's had some tough hits, 5 to 6 pretty key contributors that have hit the portal already. And I'm sure NIL is a factor. And I know at least one of them for sure that it definitely was. And one of them that really hurt to lose a guy to the portal. So my hope is that will not happen, that Ollie Gordon will stay put. And I agree, Joe. It seems like all indications seem to be that will happen. But until you hit that date, man, we're like the portal is going to be shut down. I mean, which you got a long way to go. I'll say until Ollie Gordon is like in spring football, I would still have a little bit of unease there, just because it's the wild, wild west. It's crazy right now, and that's why Mike Gundy was making the comments that he did that we're going to talk about in just a moment. Mike Gundy and Chris Klieman, because it is just a wild, wild situation that everybody is dealing with in college football now. And I say that again as somebody who steadfastly believes these student athletes should definitely be able to capitalize on the NIL money, and it's about time and all of those things. I'm very much in support of it, but it does not change the fact that, like, right now, the landscape is the wild, wild west without contracts or any commissioner in place in college football to try and put some, and I even like hate the term guardrails, but that really is like what it is. Because I feel like when people say guardrails, it's almost like a dog whistle for like somebody that doesn't like NIL in general. I am a proponent of it, but it would be better if, yes, we had a much more defined system and how things were working. But anyway, appreciate you, Joe. Also appreciate you, David. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support of the channel. David says nothing specific to say tonight, just jumping on to support your work content. Appreciate you. Go Cyclones. Hey, thank you, David. I appreciate that, my man. Show some love, everybody, for David Z for hopping on here and supporting the channel, supporting the content. Hope you enjoy the show tonight, my friend. Saw Iowa State waxed somebody in basketball tonight, right? Pretty sure that popped up on the old phone. Let's go take a gander. I already mentioned K-State lost today. Kansas had a nice come-from-behind win at Indiana that was about as predictable as anything. Look, they fell behind 13 in the second half. I was like, look, Kansas is winning this game. We know how this ends. We know how this always ends. Yes, Iowa State beat Florida A&M 96-58 today. So, David, shout out to your clones. Oklahoma State beat Oral Roberts 81-60. Hey, they took K-State to overtime in Bramlage. So, nothing to sneeze at from my perspective there. Snake. What's up, Snake? Thank you for being here. Much appreciate you, and thank you for your support of the channel. Oh, if you could add one more bowl tie-in for the Big 12, which one would you want to add and why? And thank you for, okay, so GKCO, I feel like I have seen that before, and I didn't know what it was. Go Knights, charge on. One more bowl tie-in. Well, I love the Holiday Bowl. I loved it back in the day when it was a Big 12 bowl tie-in. San Diego is one of my favorite cities, probably one of my top 3 to 5 favorite cities in America. I love visiting there. I have some friends out there, so I get there fairly regularly. And I would just love the opportunity to go out on a trip out there to watch my team play. It was always a fun game growing up too. Like, it always had the reputation as being like kind of the wild shootout-y sort of bowl game. So there are a lot of reasons: nostalgia, location, brand. The Holiday Bowl really stands out to me. I know a lot of people want a bowl game in Vegas. I've heard that talk from a lot of media around the Big 12, and I'm certainly fine with that as long as it's just something new. I know as a UCF fan, everything is new now that you're coming to the Big 12, but these have gotten really stale for those of us that have been around the Big 12 for a while now. So, Brett Yormark, I would put that is on my short list of things that I wish could get accomplished, would be to change some of the bowl tie-ins there. So it's a good question, Snake, and one that I definitely am happy to answer. Where's McMuffin? Here we go. McMuffin. Yes, McMuffin. I'm glad you brought this up, because literally about 5 minutes before I hopped on the air, I saw an alert from the 365 crew about this. So McMuffin says, Mac most valuable player, 4-star transfer QB, Dayquon Finn just committed to Baylor. We're so back. I'm so Baylor Bears right now. I love this sport. Hey, I'm happy for you, McMuffin, and I was pumped to see that. Let's look up a little Dayquon Finn. Dayquon Finn. Man, it's like so early that I'm not even seeing the articles pop up that can give me like a nice brief summary here. But I can bring up his ESPN page. 2,657 yards, 22 touchdowns, 9 picks this past year. Pretty good stat line there. He has started for 3 years, it looks like, for Toledo, putting up over 2,000 yards each year. He's got 63 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. He had similar numbers last year, 2,200 plus yards, 23 touchdowns, 12 picks a season ago. So the completion percentage went up, cut down on the picks a little bit this year. He can run. He's got over 1,800 career rushing yards and 25 touchdowns. Yeah, sign me up, man. Sign me up. Just a little that I know about him. That seems like a really nice get for Baylor and a nice replacement for Blake Shapen. And Shapen, I think was lower on the list of Baylor's problems than maybe some people would have thought this past year. But he had been around for so long. It had been a couple of years without much success at all for Baylor. It just seemed like that was a marriage that probably needed to end and was better for both parties to move on that way. Now get some new blood in here. Dayquon Finn, a lot of changes on the staff at Baylor. Significant changes anyway on the staff at Baylor. So new blood, I think, is very good, McMuffin, and bring it on, man. Great get for the Zen Master Dave Aranda and company there, and trying to get things turned around. Chuck, what's up, Chuck? I appreciate you, Chuck. Thank you for being here. Love this. Louisville fan here. All right, some ACC action in the house. Maybe future Big 12 action in the house here. Louisville was almost once in the Big 12. But thank you, Chuck. Chuck says, Louisville fan here. This worked in football, so I got to ask, does Cincinnati need a hoops coach? Okay, that's good, Chuck. Belated thanks to K-State for knocking Kentucky out of a couple tourneys. Aren't UK fans special? Oh, God, Chuck, man, I had Kentucky fans all up in the mentions last year after knocking them out. And Jerome Tang had Kentucky fans all up in the mentions last year after saying that K-State just had more dudes than them after the game. I loved it. Taking Kentucky out in the Sweet 16 was also very sweet in 2018. I loved the hell out of that. And I will tell you, I don't think there is like a more vile, awful fan base that I have come across on the internet than Kentucky. And I deal with Kansas fans on a daily basis, but like Kentucky fans have certainly the entitlement of Kansas, but they haven't earned it quite as much. I mean, I think Kansas is the best program in college basketball currently in our modern day as we sit in 2023. Kentucky fans have like the entitlement, but just with like it just feels like a lower IQ. I mean, if I'm being honest, it just feels like more lowest common denominator stuff. And it's brutal. Yeah, they are not good. They are not good, Chuck. So mission accomplished, my friend. You pushed a button there that I will definitely oblige in going after Kentucky fans. I will give you that. They're bad. They made me miss Kansas fans, which is very, very hard to do. Now, we have some great Kansas fans here. Alan, that does not apply to you. It's the most online of Kansas fans that I typically run across on Twitter. But yeah, Kentucky is no bueno. So I always enjoy getting after Kentucky a little bit there. I'm trying to remember, I feel like one of the Arthur Kaluma, maybe, that K-State got out of the portal. Kentucky was somewhat. There was somebody that K-State was after or got this portal season that got under Kentucky fan skin a little bit too. So there have been some run-ins all over the place for me with them recently. But appreciate it, Chuck. Appreciate you guys in the first wave of super chats here tonight. If you want to be a part of the show, click the $ below that chat box. That will make it a super chat. Attaches a donation to your chat. That is how you can hop in here tonight. We're over 250 people in now, so I can't keep up with everything going on in the main chat. But if you want to be on the show, click the $ below the chat box in order to do so. All right, we started getting into this with the Mike Gundy stuff as it surrounded Ollie Gordon. Will he, won't he come back to Oklahoma State? Same, by the way, with Alan Bowman. I should mention this as a transition into Mike Gundy's comments, but I was reading about Alan Bowman. I thought for sure he was done. I mean, Alan Bowman, I thought Alan Bowman was still playing quarterback at Oklahoma State, or in college football, rather, was playing quarterback in college football when I was in college in 2011. So it feels like he's been here for about a decade, but apparently he may still be able to come back. Let's see. Bowman could come back for another year, although that will require a waiver from the NCAA. Well, as it turns out, Bowman says he has applied for an injury waiver, which would allow him to come back for the 2024 season if it were allowed by the NCAA. Quote, there's a waiver that you have to submit to the NCAA to extend your 5-year clock. To get into the technical aspect of it, we're in the process of submitting that. So before any decisions of coming back or not coming back, we have to see if that waiver gets accepted, because there's no point to say, oh, I want to come back, and then it's like, well, you can't play. So we're kind of waiting on that. if it's not going to be him, Garrett Rangel, Zane Flores are behind him. And Zane Flores, I'm a little bit familiar with because K-State recruited him. Washington and Mizzou offers also. I mean, I think he's definitely a guy that has some potential and some real talent there. But Bowman would certainly be more of a steadying force to bring back. He was not spectacular, but just solid. And it was clear that once Oklahoma State made the decision to go with him this year, things got a lot better, much, much, much better, just more stable, and allowed Oklahoma State to let their offense flourish with Ollie Gordon. That's how I kind of viewed it. Like, they needed Alan Bowman just to be there to provide steady ground for Ollie Gordon to be able to take off and allow that offense to take off. So couple of big decisions there, one from the NCAA, one from Ollie Gordon himself, that could go a long way toward determining what kind of season Oklahoma State is going to have next year. But look, Mike Gundy gets a lot of crap for being kind of behind the times, and he's done a lot of that to himself. Going back years, he has had some awkward, delicate situations with his roster, with administration over the past 5 to 10 years. But say what you will about not being cutting edge on NIL, he at least seems to have a pretty good idea here about where college football is going and what could make college football better. Because this quote comes from Caden McFarland on Twitter, who attributes this quote to Gundy. Says, quote, "At some point, somebody smarter than me is going to have to figure out that we have to have contracts. We have to have transparency to move forward." So he's talking about contracts with players. And I agree with this a lot. You know, it is so hard for coaches right now to manage their rosters. And I know I'm not shedding any tears when the players have gone decades and decades without actually getting a cut of this money, and that coaches continue to get more and more money. They can leave whenever they want. I understand fully the dynamics of it. But I think for like everybody involved, even for other players, you know, trying to know who's going to be around them and what decisions they're going to make. If there were some sort of contract system where you would know, hey, this guy is going to be around for 2 years, 3 years, whatever that might be, it would be immensely helpful, I think, for everybody. You don't have that, though. And a big reason that you don't have that is because nobody will admit in the NCAA. They're getting better. They're clearly becoming more progressive, but people have not admitted that these guys, these student athletes, guys and gals, the student athletes are employees. And if you just made them employees and collectively bargained with them, like that's what this is. What Gundy is talking about is some sort of CBA in place, a collective bargaining agreement that would put some parameters on, if there are going to be contracts, if there are going to be more deadlines, limits to where you can and can't go, how exactly NIL works. And I think that Charlie Baker proposal recently was definitely a step in the right direction toward potentially providing some of that. But what you really would need is to create like a players union to collectively bargain, and then have perhaps a commissioner over all of college football that also could help direct a lot of decision making. And college football is just so different than everything else in the NCAA. I think almost anybody, any reasonable person that has a stake in the game in college football would be okay with that and recognizes the need for some sort of governing body like that that's not the NCAA, that would be just over football. And that could take care of a lot of the problems that we have. Paraphrasing here, but some of the other things Mike Gundy said, he said basically college football is like the NFL right now, but it's actually harder because there aren't the contracts that, you know, like, hey, X player is going to be on your team for however long, and this is what he's making. And like that provides you much more framework of at least just having some steadiness, and you know what you're dealing with every single year and every single offseason. Gundy also predicts, and this was something I hadn't heard anybody, at least to me, I have not heard anybody put it in these plain of terms or these types of terms, but I thought it was very interesting from Gundy. He says eventually you'll have a front office for each college team in the subdivision. So that was the Charlie Baker proposal, the subdivision where you'd have to opt in and then pay 50% of your athletes at least $30,000 a year. He says you'd have a front office that will then be making all the personnel decisions, and then the coach gets to go coach football, which again, turning into NFL junior, diet NFL, semi-pro league, however it is that you want to frame that one up. That would be the next step towards it. Now, how fascinating would that be? Like, who are you picking as your front office guy? Like, is that, I wouldn't think that's going to be the athletic director. So you just pick a different staffer. Is this where, Nick Saban gets to go grab the Bill O'Briens of the world and bring them through the Alabama rehab program and have them spend time as a GM there? Or you can maybe it becomes taking fired GMs from the NFL world to come in and do that in college football. But that is a fascinating element to me from Gundy that he brings up there. Like, hey, man, we may need to have like a full-fledged front office with a GM in college football and then get some contracts there. But I don't know. That seems less chaotic than what we currently have right now. I would actually like to see that. And whether or not the NCAA wants to get to admitting that these guys are employees, it's probably going to be forced on them sooner rather than later based on how they're just taking L after L after L with every court case that comes up now. So eventually, Gundy probably will be right that we'll get to some sort of system similar to that. So look, I had to give Gundy some credit on that, man. I thought that was pretty wise. I thought that was well stated, and I just appreciated his comments on that. And it gives me hope that maybe Gundy will come around a little bit for Oklahoma State fans' sake on NIL and be able to step up and modernize himself and evolve more with the game, because clearly the man can still coach ball when it comes to just putting together a game plan and doing it out on the field. I mean, he proved that to everybody in spades this year when a lot of us, myself included, thought he was getting to the point where he was washed. Mike Gundy is most certainly not washed. Chris Klieman, I also saw at K-State, had some comments about the calendar right now in college football. He said, quote, "We need to change quickly because the calendar is a little bit out of whack right now." He said, quote, "Hosting high school kids, hosting transfer kids, having a signing period, not biting any transfers by a signing period. So there's not like a real deadline for the transfers. And then whatever kids enter the portal, whether it's after a championship game or after a bowl game, they have a small window to come in and visit schools again, but you can't go out and see them." So yeah, totally. I think that's a fair criticism of what is happening now. Like, okay, the kids can have the freedom, but let's make sure that the system is set up for everybody to be able to best manage their rosters, which I would argue comes back to help the kids, because if the coach just has a better eye for what his roster is going to be, he'll be able to more clearly lay out what playing time may be like, what the options are going to be like for a kid more accurately at the school that he is wishing to transfer to. And look, coaches can deal with it. They make a lot of money, but you also don't want to make the job just totally impossible. And it feels like we're bordering on some of that now. I mean, again, we have this early signing period in December now, but that's going on where you're trying to wrap up your high school recruiting classes. This is also a pivotal time, an absolutely pivotal time to be landing kids out of the portal. You're preparing for a bowl game, limitations on what you can and can't do as far as getting out and traveling to see guys. I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. And Klieman wasn't done. He said, quote, "A lot of things have to adjust. We've known about this as an industry, as coaches. We talk about it all the time. I wish there was a commissioner of football in college, at least at the Power 5 level. I wish there were, so that we could get all the people together and come to some resolution. It just hasn't happened yet." And he also added this. Klieman circled back to this topic when mentioning the aspect of recruiting the guys inside your locker room to stay put. Quote, "I brought everybody back in and got off the road when Colin Klein left. I had an opportunity to visit with him, and I thought it was a really good conversation. And then you're back on the road again. That's where the calendar, we've got to get some things back in order, so that the number one goal is to keep your guys that are here and keep them here for the long haul, keep them here for 4 or 5 years. I don't think there's any kid that goes to a school and says, I'll give it a shot. I hope that's not what's going on, because that's not good for college athletics. I think most people would probably agree with him that sort of attitude would not be good for college athletics. And I would actually venture a guess that you probably do have a decent amount of that going on. Like a kid just being a little upset, maybe wanting a little more money, and like, hey, I'll just give it a shot. I think there are so many kids in the portal. They're just, by numbers game, there has to be plenty of that actually going on here right now. But there's a couple coaches sitting on, hey, we need a commish, we need contracts, we need some sort of a CBA. That's what we have to have. We need a front office, all of these different things. If we're going to be basically minor league football, just lean all the way into it and make it as effective as possible for everybody. You can certainly see where I think both of those coaches are coming from on all of that. So I appreciated the elder statesman. Well, maybe calling Chris Klieman elder statesman of Big 12 coaches isn't totally fair, but two of the most accomplished coaches, and both guys who have been around for a decent amount of time now in the Big 12. speaking up about things like that. Basically, they have the cachet. They have the cachet, I would argue, to be able to speak up and say things like that. And they're having to live it right now. They're having to live it. Like Mike Gundy's having to do all those things that Chris Klieman mentioned, while still hoping and having to work the Ollie Gordon angle and making sure that he's maintaining the best player on his roster who would be a Heisman candidate for him coming back next year. All right, let's hop back into some of the super chats here. If you want to be a part of the show tonight, click the $ below the chat box. That is how you can do so. It will attach a donation to your chat, pin it in a separate column for me, and guarantees that it makes it on the show here tonight. Couldn't do it without all of your guys' support who do that. So you guys help make this channel a possibility every single week. You help make these shows a possibility and a reality to come into fruition every single week. So thank you. Those of you who do help me out there. Michael's given me a chance to pile on here. He says, Michael says, you want to pile on Kentucky? My daughter is a senior at tiny UNC Wilmington. They took UK down. Did they really? Let's go look at Kentucky basketball. ESPN. Yeah, 80-73. How about that? I did hear Kentucky beat Carolina this weekend. So Kentucky fans, I'm sure, are basking in the glory of that. But the good old Seahawks of UNC Wilmington winning 80-73. You love to see it. You love to see Rupp get shut up with all of that. So I am very much on board with UMC Wilmington there. I don't know. Kentucky to me just feels like so very 2010, like back when John Wall was around there, it was undeniably cool. Anthony Davis, a couple of years after that, it was undeniably cool. Calipari was still like the toast of the town in the total one and done environment. I don't know, man. It just feels like Kentucky's gotten a little bit stale with Calipari, and it's kind of blah now. They're not as sexy to me as they were back then. You may not have liked Kentucky fans, but back then you could not really deny what it was that they had year in and year out, and they were a lot of damn fun. I loved John Wall. John Wall in college was one of my favorite college basketball players to watch at the time, and the song that went along with it, like all that stuff, his little alarm thing, all that was great. But John Wall ain't walking through that door anymore. So thank you, Michael, for giving me the opportunity to pile on Kentucky a little bit there. I will always take that opportunity. You guys are always welcome to goad me into that here on the channel. Michael, what's up, Michael? Thank you for being here. Michael says, I hear West Virginia already has a GM with NFL experience on their staff already. All right. Well, who am I missing there? Who am I missing? You're going to make me go look up the West Virginia football staff. And maybe I'm making myself look dumb by not having this right off the top of my head. Looking here, who do we have on the support staff? I'd imagine there's probably a support staffer, right? Oh boy, it's a big staff. That's a problem. Like these staffs these days, you got a ton of people. I don't know. Someone's gonna have to point that one out for me. And I'm sorry if I'm outing myself as an idiot here. I think I also said Michael. Michelle Weintraub. My bad. I just screwed that entire thing up. I completely messed that one up. My fault. I'll even pop into the regular chat here to look and see who I am missing. West Virginia fans, help me out on who I'm missing here from Michelle. But Michelle, I appreciate you weighing in. Thank you. I guess it sounds like West Virginia might be ahead of the curve on getting everything set up with the front office, ready to roll with the front office there. Is this Jimbo? Did we sneak Jimbo on staff? Is that what happened in Morgantown? Put Jimbo in charge of personnel? I mean, that seemed to work really well in College Station. I kid, West Virginia fans. Alan, what's going on, Alan? I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Alan. Alan says, John, good Jayhawk win versus Indiana, but it seems like we insist on first falling behind before making a big run to win. Wears me out. Grimes seems to be fitting in. Any news on Linton? Rock Chalk Jayhawk Alan. Yeah, thank you, Alan. Alan, I will just say, I mean, I said it earlier in the show, incredibly predictable that Kansas would pick off Indiana and go on that run to win. But yes, I mean, slow starts eventually. can come around to bite you, particularly like if you're thinking about the NCAA tournament. But I think Kansas will be more than fine. Man, I mean, Kevin McCullough looks really good. They're just tough, like Bill Self teams, undeniably tough, undeniably gritty, undeniably confident when they need to be. So it's really damn hard to beat them. And it just, you kind of say it out loud. Like, is Indiana ready to be beating Kansas? It does not feel like that to me. So it did not stun me in the slightest. Interesting to hear on Jeff Grimes. Yeah, I need to pay a little bit more attention to that. Probably what's being said about Jeff Grimes since he got to Lawrence. I outlined that in a previous show, but I feel like that's kind of a high risk, high reward if you're looking at what his resume has been. A lot of stops that have been really good, some other parts that have been really bad, and you can find people on both sides of the aisle that will love him up or really dog on him and what he brings to the table. But look, Lance Leipold is a very good coach. So I tend to think he will figure it out enough one way or the other. Now, does that mean the offense will be as dynamic as it was with Andy Kotelnicki? I mean, I think that guy's about as good as anybody in the country at designing an offense. So that will be a tough task. But Kansas being able to pull a name like Jeff Grimes, who was probably, it sounded like, going to land on the BYU staff before Kansas came in and took him away, is it's a good sign for where Kansas is at. Alan, the thing that's interesting to me about Kansas right now is this talk of KU maybe playing their home football games this next year at Arrowhead Stadium. They're in some conversations with that. When the stadium project was initially laid out there, the talk was they were just going to do like basically half capacity home games this year actually at the stadium in Lawrence. So I'm wondering what went wrong with that. Kansas also has, I always forget his name. Is it Illig? Is it one of the Illigs? Who's the guy, the Sporting guy? I figured maybe they'd try to go to Sporting to play some games there because they have an alum who's high up there at Sporting. I'm sure some of that's about the capacity. K-State played a spring game there once. I definitely remember that. Probably 2015, maybe somewhere around there. So anyway, a lot of things happening with Kansas to be interested in. The news on Linton. Well, I was at the K-State basketball game again earlier today. He did show up, but here's some very funny things about Richard Linton and his appearance at the basketball game today. Richard Linton, K-State University president, very hated man right now for being the single one to put his foot down on Dayquon Tomlin, kick him out, definitely against the wishes of Jerome Tang. So you can imagine why people are upset there, upsetting the basketball coach that you don't want to leave, making some threats behind the scenes to Gene Taylor, the athletic director there, who's the current athletic director of the year in college athletics. So he's not a popular guy at all. There were some people with Fire Linton shirts at the game. Richard Linton showed up, but he did not sit in his normal seat. Instead, he sat basically on kind of press row, like base or sideline courtside seats, but he strategically sat right next to Gene Taylor, the athletic director. Gene Taylor was also not on board with the decision to get rid of Dayquon Tomlin, but Richard Linton has been running around telling everybody behind the scenes that all three were unified. And so to me, it's like, hey, here are the optics. Like, look, I'm sitting with the guy. We're cool. Just kind of a joke. And the other thing is, this is so damn funny to me. Before the starting lineups of the game, they have the PA guy read from a script a line that it just is like, hey, on behalf of K-State Athletics Director Gene Taylor and Kansas State University President Richard Linton, welcome to Bramlage Coliseum. Like, it's like that. It's just a line like as basic as that. Took it out today. The directive was to take it out. It was not read there. It was not read, as I understand, at a women's basketball game also earlier this week. So Linton apparently sensitive enough to not want that to be read, to risk booze raining down at Bramlage Coliseum there. So, I mean, hey, I guess I can understand, but that's really the Linton update. I have heard some fairly encouraging things behind the scenes just about as it relates to like Jerome Tang and the environment there. And he did speak publicly. He was asked about it and said publicly, like, I'm not going to be bullied out of a job by one guy. I'm paraphrasing a bit there, but that was the general message. So, I'm not in quite as much of like free fall, freak out mode as I was before, but I'm still going to be very, very worried about it as we get to March and April and what is going to happen there. And not just for Jerome Tang, but like, I just don't want this to force Gene Taylor into some kind of early retirement. I don't know. I still don't think it's great. I still think there's a lot of damage that's been done behind the scenes by this guy and his ego and temper. And I don't know how tenable it will be long term, but the temperature is cooled a little bit right now. Like, things have died down a bit for right now, Alan. So I think that's about the best update I can give you. But I appreciate you checking in here tonight. I very much appreciate you being here. If you guys want to be a part of the show, you got about 10 minutes left. This is going to be like your 5 to 10 minute warning on the show tonight. If you have something, click the $ below the chat box to make it a super chat. It will attach a donation to your chat. It will pin it in a separate column for me. 250 plus people in the regular chat. I just can't keep up with everything. So if you want to be a part of the show, that is how. And your support is what allows me to continue doing this for you guys on a week in, week out basis. So I much appreciate all of you who do help. You can also help by just simply liking the video. It's totally free, just one click. But if you could go click that like button, I would much appreciate that. And you can leave a comment underneath the video in the comment section during or after. Agree, disagree, love me, hate me. All of that stuff definitely does help. And it's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo as well. If you're not catching it live and you would like to show your support that way too. And if you leave a question or comment there, I will make sure to read it on the next show. So also a way to get in if you're not here actually live as this is happening. I think we've pretty much gotten to all the portal stuff in one way or another here throughout the show so far. Ollie Gordon is the big one, waiting around to see what's going to happen with him. Alan Bowman trying to get a waiver from the NCAA to come back to Oklahoma State. Taj Brooks, talked about it a little at the top with the Texas Tech bowl win, but Taj Brooks coming back is massive news for Texas Tech. They need him to build around 1,400 rushing yards this year, only behind Ollie Gordon in the Big 12. He was 4th nationally, had 120 yards per game, led the Big 12 and the nation with 91 forced missed tackles. Dude's a total stud. Taj Brooks is great. He is excellent. Almost hit 100 yards in the bowl game. That's going to be a huge boost for Texas Tech to just have that key cog to build around. The big if with Tech always seems to be, I feel like I'm always talking about this with Tech, like if you can keep a quarterback healthy, but like if Baron Morton does stay healthy, maybe he will be able to prove me wrong somewhat on that ceiling, especially if he has a weapon that's a guy who probably, Ollie Gordon, I hope, will be returning too, but would be at least one of the 2 best running backs in the Big 12 next year. So there is that. Matthew Golden to Texas, which sucks to see a former 4-star kid that was a huge recruit, a huge get for Houston, wind up going to Texas. Understand there was a coaching change at Houston. Maybe that played a role in this. Maybe it would have happened anyway. I don't know. I don't have enough insight on the situation to say that, but I just hate seeing a guy jump to the evil empire from a school already in the state. And he had a nice year last year with 6 touchdowns. So been hearing about Matthew Golden for a long time and hate to see that for Houston. Some updates on K-State, guys. The buzz earlier today, some future casts were being filed that were projecting Will Howard to USC, which would be very interesting, man. I mean, look, I would be thrilled for the guy. Go out to L.A., live that sort of life. I'm sure get a huge bag, get a lot of cash from USC in order to do so. What kind of a fit is that with Lincoln Riley, man? I don't. It's really hard for me to picture. I don't totally know what to expect with that, but I certainly wish Will Howard the best. And he's kind of like the deal at K-State was like, if you surrounded him with a bunch of weapons like he had in 2022 and an offense that was humming, he's going to give him the football, man. And USC, you're going to have no shortage of weapons. So I feel like they could build a pretty good infrastructure for him there to really maximize his talent. And then he'd be working with a guy who's worked with all these Heisman quarterbacks, right, in Lincoln Riley. So that certainly wouldn't hurt. Kobe Savage, safety that transferred from K-State, and that was one that definitely I think hurt more than any of all the guys that left K-State. He is likely headed to Oregon. That was the buzz on social media today. And then Nate Matlack, a defensive end who left K-State. That was all about a scheme issue. He didn't like playing in the 3-man front. He's going to Pitt, which was a surprising one. And at least for me, that was positive to see because there was buzz about Kansas there and him potentially wanting to stay close to home, but that did not come to fruition. So he will instead be going to Pitt. Let me pop in a couple super chats here. Cameron, why is K-State athletics on fire at the moment? Well, it'd be the president, Richard Linton. Cameron, like we just talked about there a minute ago with Allen. I mean, the long story short there, he put his foot down on Dayquon Tomlin, not very transparent throughout the process, never once met with Tomlin, wouldn't meet with Tang unless there were attorneys present, flaky on some meetings, went against the wishes of Gene Taylor and Jerome Tang to get rid of Tomlin. Then he's been lying about it to people behind the scenes. A lot of worry about ruining that relationship with Jerome Tang and forcing him to want to leave earlier. A lot of talk about him issuing threats behind the scenes surrounding like Gene Taylor and potentially his job. Reigning college athletics director of the year, obviously very tied closely in with Chris Klieman. So concerned there that if that relationship were to go south, that could put Chris Klieman on the line too, and Gene Taylor. So you've had this holy trinity of Klieman, Taylor, Tang, leading K-State through the best year plus probably in the history of K-State athletics, and that being jeopardized by a meddling president with a temper and an ego. That is the long and short of why K-State athletics was on fire. I would say it's calmed down some, because then you also have football just dealing with the natural ebbs and flows of the portal and being hit a little bit harder, certainly, than they were last year. But I think that even was a little exaggerated. The number was up past 15, but a lot of the guys that transferred were guys that weren't playing or were seeing writing on the wall or were perhaps asked to leave. So it was really like 5 key contributors. And even then, one of them is Will Howard, who you were choosing Avery Johnson over him. So the bleeding has stopped a bit on that front. K-State landed the number 2 offensive tackle in the transfer portal. They got a 4-star wide receiver. They had a huge weekend of visitors this past weekend of guys that came in. They brought in a bunch of receivers where they're looking to fill a couple of spots there. So I imagine you're going to see some commitment news in the coming days for K-State out of that. So it's getting better. But yeah, for a minute there, it definitely felt like everything was on fire. David, what's up, David? David says, Husker fan here. Love your show. So happy that you are not like other on clickbait items. Hey, I appreciate it, David. Thank you for the kind words. I try very hard not to be clickbait and luring you in for things that aren't accurate. Like, I have to make it's a tough line to balance. Like, you want the headline, certainly just with how the YouTube game works. You got to make the headline eye-catching. You've got to make it the most interesting part of the video to draw people in. But I also try very hard not to be like dishonest with it there. So, and I also just try to like tell you guys what's going on and then give you my opinion on it and react to it. I don't try to be the guy who has all these sources, and that's not my game. I know my lane. My lane is just to be an entertaining personality and give you what other people much smarter and more connected than I are reporting and react to it. So that's my deal, man. I did 10 years doing a daily radio show. That's the name of the game. So David, I appreciate the kind words. And as a Husker fan, I have to give you kudos for the game today, man. Like I said, I was in Manhattan courtside watching K-State and Nebraska, and the Huskers just punked K-State in Manhattan today to the point where they were very loud "Go Big Red" chants for the last couple minutes of the game, which sucked. That part did suck. I will tell you that much. Our web. Yes, our web. We talked about this earlier that DQ Finn, Toledo quarterback, just committed, and it is a huge get. It is definitely a huge get. Player of the year in the conference, a guy who can run it and throw it, and had 2,600 passing yards this past year, and then had what did I say? It was like 600 plus rushing yards and a double-digit rushing touchdowns. Like, the guy seems to be a stud. So love to see that. I am very intrigued to see how that works at Baylor, especially with a change in the offense from the top down. So great get, R Webb. Happy to see it, my friend. Happy to see it for all of you Baylor fans. If you came here looking for more reaction to the huge win in court for the Pac-2, I would direct you to the video that dropped earlier today. I'll give you just a brief synopsis here before I get out of here. So this is definitely buzzer beater time. If you have something that you want to get on the show tonight, now is the time. Click the $ below the chat box in order to do so. It is buzzer beater time. But reading here, the Washington Supreme Court denied a request by the 10 outgoing schools to review a lower court's preliminary injunction that had established Washington State and Oregon State as the only members of the board. So with the decision from the Washington Supreme Court, the only official members of the Pac-12 board right now are Washington State and Oregon State. So they theoretically would have control over the war chest, though they are bound by doing what's in the fiduciary interest of the conference, meaning they can't just take all the money. They're going to have to give at least most of it back to the other 10 schools. But for now, they can hold it. And John Wilner's reporting basically said one of the biggest issues here is not so much the war chest of money. It's worrying about the liabilities that come with the House versus the NCAA lawsuit that's out there right now, where the Pac-12 is a named defendant. That could potentially put them on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars. They've got the Comcast lawsuit. There was the Holiday Bowl issue. There were a bunch of things going on that could be liabilities, meaning things that they would have to pay money for. And that is one of the things that they will have to worry about. There's also the fact that even though they got this decision ruled in favor of them, it still could be that these other 10 outgoing schools could file in a different state. There's even been talk of like they could threaten to just dissolve the conference as a leverage play there. So we still may not be done with all of this. And that's why another thought is like maybe they just get to a negotiating table and get something done. John Wilner reported that in November that got close to happening, but then the 10 schools decided to punt on that and not do it. But it also seems like they were really caught off guard by this decision. So this decision might be enough to make them just be like, all right, look, let's just work something out, settle it, and be done. So look for that in the coming days from the Pac-12 and the Pac-2. But I was definitely happy that the Pac-2 got a W there. I absolutely want to see the Pac-2 do as well as they can. They've got the scheduling agreement with the Mountain West for next year. The official schedules I did see were released for at least the games that will be played for Oregon State and Washington State were released. So you can take a look at what their actual schedules are going to be like for the upcoming year. All right, couple super chats before we get out of here. Matthew, appreciate the support as always, Matthew. Matthew says, coming in late, we'll listen to the show later. Can't wait for Big 12 basketball league play. Yeah, me too. And we are almost there. I'm broken record, dude, but it's going to be a beast. It is going to be a beast. And yeah, K-State playing Nebraska today, big crowd. It felt kind of like a home game or a Big 12 game. Had a Big 12 like atmosphere. So did the Villanova game that I was at not too long ago also. So that does have me jonesing, for what Big 12 basketball is going to be like this upcoming year. Although K-State obviously has some problems. They're going to need to get shored up if they are going to be any sort of a factor in the top half of the league. But Matthew, I'm with you. Thank you for showing your support, my friend. And David, appreciate you weighing in. David says, wonder if the Pac-2 withholds money due to Comcast cable lawsuit. Yeah, that was basically the thought for what they did the other day, which was trying to read that. So last week, Oregon State and Washington State prevented the conference from making its traditional mid-year revenue distribution to the campuses. They withheld the mid-year money, which would have been about $5 million per school. And they said it was based on financial concerns that were specifically about liabilities expected from court cases against the Pac-12 and the NCAA. But that made the other 10 schools very mad, and they thought that was going to seal their argument. Wilner made it sound like they figured that would seal their argument that, hey, these guys are not fit to be the only two board members of the conference, and that would help them in court, but it did not. It did not. So at least for now, still a little bit more control for Oregon State and Washington State there. And they have the ability to try and withhold some of that for that. And that's, some of that, they need to be able to plan. They need to make sure that their butts are covered as much as humanly possible. And again, it's hard for me to feel any sort of sympathy for the 10 schools being like, oh, well, look, this is based on what we're doing this year. We should get this money. Our student athletes, but you don't care about your student athletes, man. You're going to be sending Olympic sports to go play way across the country in Piscataway. Okay. It's not about you caring about your student athletes. Just spare me that. You're leaving them high and dry. You're going to deal with a little bit of discomfort here, and you probably deserve to. End of story. Speaking of end of story, that's going to wrap it up for me, I think, on the chat here tonight. Thank you, all of you guys who were here. Thank you to everybody who liked the video. Please do like the video on your way out. Leave a comment in the comment section. Love me, hate me, agree, disagree. I don't care. It's all great. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to support the channel there. And make sure you're subscribed so you're catching these chats and the other content that I'm dropping in as well. You can go check out the video that I put out earlier this morning that was about the Pac-2 stuff more in depth if you want more information on that front. And I'll leave you with the same parting message as always. Tell your friends, whether it's on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, wherever you're at on social media, let your friends know. Facebook groups are great. If it's fans of the Big 12, fans of your team, let them know about this channel. Let's continue to grow this thing. And even word of mouth, go tell a friend, go tell a family member that's into college football, conference realignment, Big 12 football and basketball, all very welcome here on this channel. So Thank you guys for being here. Fun chat tonight. Much appreciate all of you, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I will talk to you soon.